could absolutely be faking this. I could have a guy behind here, listening to me in a room wearing things up and down like this. But and conversely, I could bring all this stuff here and still fake it. The fact is, I will show you it's real. So if we had due diligence done on us by 2 VC firms in the Washington area with great Rotec and Valhalla partners are backing us, as well as some of the biggest brands in retail, service providers, CE companies, etc. So if anybody's here, it's in that role, let me know. We'll gladly have you come up to Melbourne and take a look at this. We're also looking for programmers and developers. Anybody here is in there, in that space. We have job postings on our website, zaroff.com. So let me know, or just send me an email after this. I want to make sure we didn't forget that.
Do you do like the people work remotely from here, they work for you, or are you looking for people up there in Pennsylvania?
Primarily up in Pennsylvania, but we do have remote people that work. And we have one of our guys is based in Germany, and somebody else who is camp as well. So any questions anybody has? I think you're coming up.
Well, so I'm going to moderate the questions just in the interest of time. And I've got 2 questions to ask first, so I'm going to ask those first. And unfortunately, he's got to catch a train too. So, but one question I had is, the companies are making things in these connected home spaces don't really have a showcase like the Staples showcase, and that's a showcase in presumably every Staples store. Do you mean every store or selected stores or what?
I can't disclose at this point.
Okay,
Maybe disclose that, but I mean, I can say that this is a big deal. I mean, when you look at, and this is a macro trend. This isn't just Staples. I mean, you look at the Dells of the world, the HPs, and the death of the desktop PC, and the laptops, and the rise of pads and mobile. Right? This is a logical sector for something like Staples to get into. I think there's a lot more retailers on this as well.
And then the second thing is it open, or is it considered an open or a closed system? And it seems like it's a package system for the big brands. They want people in there modifying software and things like that. Some of the other home automation are more like API and that kind of stuff. Where do you fit in that spectrum?
Yeah, we have we're all about open, right? And so the fact is this is all standard Z-Wave, and because we're supplying to other companies, right, these big brands who are the distribution channel, they're going to make their own strategic decision, right? So you could hypothetically say, well, maybe there's a big manufacturer of light switches who wants to offer a home automation solution, but they want to lock it down so you can't have other people's light switches, only theirs. Personally, I think that's a bad idea, but like frankly, we're an arms dealer. How you want to use our arms is really up to you and your God, So if that's a business decision you make, that's fine. I think it's a bad strategy. And the fact is this is open and any Z-Wave device you've got, or Lutron, and that's another big thing, an indicator to know Lutron. This is a big step for them going into this market.
Okay, we'll take a few questions from the audience. Yes, okay.
Yeah. One of the things you said initially in one of your early slides was, this may be 2 or 3, I'll try to make it quick, was DIY. Now, I'm sure that people who are wannabe makers and makers who are maybe in the room saw DIY and there's great common architecture that's
I would call this hardcore DIY. I mean, makers and hackers and those kind of guys are already covered in their part in this market, which is fairly small. Right?
Yeah, so that's the answer to the question. There's not really a slot or a developers program or open API for developers to utilize.
Yeah.
Your Linksys $99 router.
Correct, for right now. Because the fact is, we're not trying to create a brand or a platform. I liken. Did anybody here know Boxy? Knows Boxy, right? We just had an editorial we wrote about a week ago about the story of Boxy. They were a competitor of ours in the connected TV space. And their attempt was they started off in the hacker maker market. And it was a cool product, but I could barely do it. I had to ruin my Apple TV to basically load new software, etc. And they were trying to create a consumer brand. Same as TiVo. If you ever know the basic history of TiVo, how much money they've raised and spent, and they just never, and then they were surpassed by the cable companies with DVRs. So our goal is really to make this a mass market. When I say mass market, my mom, right? So that she can do this.
The basic program open to higher level compliance people, subscribers here in the system.
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Let's take that one offline, so I get a
Yeah,
couple
sure,
more,
sure.
we're getting a little tight. Yes,
How dependent is this on-off service?
The question is, how dependent is this on on-off servers? Well, we're basically like everybody else, using, big data cloud management, service providers. We've got, the 5 nines, et cetera. So, these are
but very
servers.
dependent, right? Isn't it, doesn't it depend upon?
Well, it's not cloud only. I mean, the nice thing is, so for example, if your internet goes down, or our servers go down, or our vendor servers go down, your house is still running. And that's the whole idea. Because there's some people that would tell you that you could do a home automation, a connected home, all cloud-based. We don't believe that. So all your data, all your controls, knowledge, the connections between all your devices and all your settings are in here as well. So if somebody cuts your internet connection, you're fine. Now you wouldn't be able to access it remotely, right? We wouldn't be able to download software.
But if I want to turn off the garage light,
Yep.
am I communicating just with this device, and I don't necessarily have to be sending packets to cloud?
Correct. Yeah.
That's a big difference too, I mean, between different products, is how much they rely on the cloud backend versus running locally. And it also has implications on where all the data is going too, about your house and your home, you turn things on and off. All right, one more quick one.
Because there are markets still in the United States that don't have fiber or broadband.
Yes.
Is there a way, do you see a future to tie this into biometrics? For example, if you say your wife were to go on and touch the doorknob, essentially, to kind of trigger everything through your biometric signature?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, that's just another input device, right? Whether it's on pressing a series of buttons or putting a palm print or fingerprint or eye recognition, So that's a good example. That will happen, Yeah.
The equipment you use prefab from the factory that's in a home.
Yes. Yeah, it comes already configured, like the door lock, all those kind of
Yeah.
things come configured.
Or
with your
now,
chip.
you can't, if I got an old home that's not a smart home, you got to come in and overhaul my whole house for everything to work.
No, just devices. They're wireless, so you have a motion detector. The only thing you would need an expert in is like if you want to replace a light switch or an outlet. I would
But I'm
recommend you an electrician.
saying, then I got to go buy the blinds that, talks with that device.
Yes.
Yeah, but you only buy the ones that you're interested in buying, that you're interested in putting in. So like if you just want to do blinds and nothing else,
Yeah.
that's all you got to do. But if you want to do the whole house, you go all wild and get everything.
Right.
So you decide.
Depends on your finance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Always does. Always does. All right, thanks.
Start small. That's all right.
Thanks, Bob. That was just- We're going to do a quick changeover for Jeff. And
I know, right?
everybody, while we're waiting, let's get down here. I think it's kind of ironic because we're talking about Staples and Staples Connect. This is actually just a little data project that I've been working on. It's 5 Staples Easy buttons, and they've been modified to bring the contacts out so they can go into a Raspberry Pi and then detect with switch presses. And then there's software running in this Raspberry Pi, and it's connected to the internet through a Wi-Fi link, and it transmits these button events out to wherever I want them to go. So right now it's actually programmed to send them to 2 places. It tweets. Whenever you hit this, it sends out tweets on a certain, there's an IoTDC_data channel where these tweets go. And then it also sends it to a real-time audio stream processor that lets you hear all the events that are occurring on buttons. What this is really destined for is it's going to go into the data meetups here in DC, and we're going to have it by the doors. When people walk into the auditorium, we're going to have some questions, and they hit the answers, and it'll collect the data in real time, and then it'll do a real-time visualization. As people come in and sit down, they get to see what's happening as people filter in. So, but I thought it was kind of ironic because of the Staples. All right, Jeff, you all set?
I'm all set, thank you very much. Glad to be here. I'm going to talk more. So, my name is Jeff Barrows. I'm with Sentai. We're a small company based here in DC, and I have basically been a defense contractor for the past 13 years. I started Sentai in 2000 with the name Sent being a triple pun, many eyes, tiny eyes, cheap eyes. I was interested in going after wireless sensor networks, but 2000 was not the best time to start a company, so I went in an interesting direction, continued the work I was doing before at the Naval Research Lab, working on basically building small vision sensors for flying drones, and put my 10,000 hours into that sort of thing. I'll tell you about it, and next thing you know, this IoT comes up. It's really quite fascinating. So, just a list of some of our sponsors. We do a lot of, you can pretty much guess who we work for. But I'm going to basically first, I just got back from the Trillion Sensor Summit held at Stanford University last week. It was a fantastic workshop. I'm going to try to give you a distillation of what I kind of got out of it. And then I'll talk about some of my own stuff. I love to talk about my stuff, and if we have time, I'll show a few little demonstrations. So first, the Trillion Sensor Summit, it's a very forward-thinking summit organized by a group of people largely from the MEMS industry, but also people from Cisco and so forth. And the purpose of it was to address the question of what could you do if you had a trillion sensors linked together doing stuff.
Jeff, can you
Yes.
tell me what MEMS means?
Oh, I'm sorry. MEMS, microelectromechanical systems, like a little tiny microscopic gyro or accelerometer. If you have a smartphone, you have MEMS gyros in there. That's how it knows whether you're tilted up or down or turning. I could talk at length about that. I love it. So, I mean, it was a nice balance between academics, industry, and entrepreneurs. The CEO I can't remember off the top of my head. He drives a nice car. They were the first $1 billion IPO MEMS company, and so everyone was excited about that. So, questions. How do we make a trillion sensors? How do we connect them together? How do we process all that data? And how do we bring about abundance? I'll tell you about that in a minute. And of course, what are some of the certain technologies that need to be addressed? So what is abundance? Interesting book written by Diamandis and Kotler. And the thesis of the book is basically that a combination of factors are going to push the human race so that by around 2050 or so, worldwide supply for goods and services, materials will exceed demand. That's very, I hope that happens. I'll just say that. But their thesis is that it's a combination of technology is rapidly accelerating and building on top of each other, combined with DIY innovation, combined with technical philanthropists. When someone suddenly becomes a billionaire, they want to do something more than sit on the beach, and they give money back. To basically everything combining together to basically making food cheaper, energy cheaper, so forth and so forth and so forth. Very interesting book. And so one of the themes of this conference was how can we actually have these trillion sensors contribute to abundance? How can we make corn cheaper to grow? How can we make energy, how can we make a building more efficient? Because if you get a 5% or 10% improvement, and you compound that enough times, that becomes a major improvement. That's compound interest in your favor. I'll skip over this slide. Cisco is there as well, and this is a concept for a multi-layer architecture that they envision. At the front level, you have sensors and actuators. an actuator is a switch or something that affects the environment, you know what a sensor is. And what they envision are clusters, which are basically